attitude. We need swagger, okay? Regardless of what happens out there. Doesn't matter. Keep your swagger.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Five Hole Fantasy Hockey Podcast.
Sorry. There we go.
Just for shit, the intro one more time. But hello, everybody, and welcome in. We are the Five Hole Fantasy Hockey Podcast, and we are your hosts tonight, Craig, Jay, and Alan. What's going on, boys? Welcome back. We're back together, and it feels so good.
I know, man. And I ordered my Johnny Tavares amulet, man. I'm going to be protected from the Wi-Fi's and it'll make me better at fantasy hockey.
Man, I almost started singing this song, but yeah, just excited to be back. Weekend 2, let's go.
For those that are joining us live tonight, we are here tonight to do the week 2 weekend preview, something that the three of us did time in and time out last season together. This is actually the first time the three of us have been on the mics since the Five-Hole team expansion and brought all of the Taxi Squad members, including Matty K, who's not with us, into the mainstream and the full scale Five-Hole team. So great to be back with both of you boys and running through the team. You know, I was supposed to be on with you last week. You both did a great job. You know, as I said to TJ on the Tuesday Trends show, we are finally healthy. You know, we're going to cross our fingers. You know, I know we're going into that wintry blur, but hopefully that's the first wave out of the way. And we get a couple months here to enjoy you know, not only this show with you guys and then talking fantasy hockey with our listeners out there, but, you know, healthy times with the family instead of late nights with boogers and coughing and all the fun stuff that comes along with that. So Jay and I have not seen each other actually since last season. So Jay mentioned before we jumped on, you know, I'm in a different spot. Well, I'm also in a different house. So we moved, so I don't have the same working space. I'm currently building that space, but I won't podcast from there because it's on the second floor and it's too loud with everybody sleeping. So I'm in my basement, still trying to figure out where I'm going to pod from, but we're in a comfortable spot, so we'll take it from there. So, boys, how's the fantasy hockey season started for both of you? I know Alan and I were talking offline that it's been nice to just be more casual about it in our own personal journeys. We were a bit diehard last year, kind of diving into this game. So taking it a little bit, not less serious, but more of a enjoyment style approach. I don't know about you, Jay. How are you doing? I know you mentioned you've taken a dabble into Dynasty, so I wish you good luck in that.
It's honestly ridiculous. I think it's like 5 on Yahoo, 5 on Fantrax. It's a lot, honestly. But I mean, the thing is too, Craig, we're in the same league too, right? Actually, Alan, we're all in the same league too.
Yeah, in true Jay fashion, he beat me last week in the listener league. Like, I'm going to scoop up all these Jersey guys for the 2 games and then drop them for all these Winnipeg guys.
We have to anticipate that from Jay by now, Alan. We know how he rolls, right? So he's going to stream hard every week. We got to respect that. So, but yeah, like we're still in the newly named, we'll call it tier 6, but heavy on the bangers, Five-Hole listener league. It was the transformation of the Taxi Squad inaugural listener league that we put together last year. We have many of the same GMs, including the 3 of us. I think we have 4 new guys, Jay, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Alan, I think is just in the tier 4 one, unless
Right.
Alan, you're also in the Super Banger. Yeah.
Okay, so me and Jay are in the Super Bangers listener league, which I would guess is like tier 8. And then Alan, and are you both in tier 4 with Matty
Tier 4.
K? with Matty K as well.
With Matty K.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a tough one. It'll be interesting to see who
So
gets bragging rights out
Maddie's
of that
killing
one.
it, man. Like, well, he drafted
he's doing well.
Shesterkin where he should, but then just everything else is going his way.
We're gonna just have to start continuing to drive Hero G apparently, because good God, what happened to Jari tonight and Riddick? 0G did not go well tonight for those that were looking for streams.
Is Blomqvist?
Yeah.
Anyways,
We are going to talk about him, Jay, but yes, he very well could take the starting job from Jari with how awful Jari has been. And if anybody's listening live with us right now, Jari gave up 3 goals on 5 shots and got pulled in the first 8 minutes of tonight's game against who are they playing? I can't even remember.
Montreal, I want to say.
Oh, Buffalo. And then Blomqvist came in. And I believe I haven't looked since, but before I jumped on, Pittsburgh came all the way back and is leading 4-3, and Blomqvist has not let in a goal.
So Buffalo is now 5-4 up, ridiculously.
Okay, so Blomqvist has let in 1. So Jari just looks awful. And then Big Dave save Rick also just getting absolutely lit up tonight by Toronto in Toronto. So not a good stream there for those that lost Kemper. Just maybe I'm starting to believe in this Hero G, boys. I don't know. It's when you're relying on Ingram, I know Allen has a soft spot for him in many spots. Can get real shaky already in week 2. But why don't we dive in here and start jumping into the week 2 weekend preview. We'll take you guys around the league with some storylines and some injuries. And then we're going to dive into the mailbag. We got some good questions that we're going to discuss as a group. From some Discord members, and then Alan will kick us through the schedule and how you guys can exploit that and take advantage of that ahead of your league mates heading into the weekend to lock up those week 2 victories. But before I do that, I guess we got to do the plugs, boys. We got to, if you aren't part of it, get your butt in there and join us in the fantasy or the 5-hole fantasy hockey Discord. It's now over 2,600 like-minded fantasy hockey individuals and growing each day. Really good to see that community continues to grow. A lot of fun going on there. A lot of people helping each other get better at fantasy hockey and just talking life in general. Follow us all on Twitter /X. You'll find our handles in the show notes. And follow the main thread from 5-hole fantasy hockey as well. And please join us here on YouTube. We'll be live streaming, I think, every episode, every show this season. We have the bullshit show. You'll see that again tomorrow night for those that joined TJ, Raj, and Jay last week, where we just kind of kick back and enjoy and relax as a team and watch some hockey and shoot the shit with you guys. Eventually, Alan will be starting up Start Sit Live Saturdays, which we kind of dabbled into last year. So that'll be a fun thing on Saturday mornings, just to help you guys get that edge on the busy slate of Saturday games. But we're really trying hard to get up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So please subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your fine podcasts. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and and leave us a 5-star review there as well. I guess, let's dive in here while we're here. So storylines from around the league that we wanted to touch on for tonight. Boys, it was resembling what Edmonton did last year. It looks like hopefully they're kind of steadying that tide. Earlier than last year, they did get a 4-3 victory in overtime last night. It still was real shaky. If I'm not mistaken, they were down 3-0 to start that game. I saw some audio clip. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was like closed doors after the first period, somebody just screaming at the Oilers team, and people were speculating if it was McDavid or Draisaitl or one of the leaders of the team, just somebody just lambasting them for the horrible start once again. And they seem to have steadied that tide and turned it around. I don't know what you guys think. It certainly looked like a good God the Oilers were just headed down the same. I don't know if they've righted the ship because they started ugly in that game too, but at least they got the W.
Yeah, and
Skinner looks fucking rough again. Like, good God.
I heard Knobloch made a dry ride pine for a couple shifts. That came out today. But I watched most of the first and second periods. I gotta say, like, it reminded me of when I watched them last year against the Sharks. Like, they just look frantic. Like, they're just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. I mean, I'm sure there's a system to it, but Philly looked so much more calm and relaxed just playing their system.
And I mean, the thing is too, like, I watched most of the third period, and you could see like the third tying goal was almost, I don't want to say individual brilliance, so to speak, but McDavid, waltzed his way through, like, played a 1-2, and found an open Bouchard that was completely, like, there was no coverage. It was a blown coverage, basically. And then there was controversy on that game-winning goal too. You kind of felt a bit for the Flyers, right? It was, I don't remember which guy exactly, but there was a guy going on a breakaway on the Flyers, and they just didn't call. Like, they just didn't call him. He just couldn't get a shot off. They didn't call the play, and there McDavid goes racing the other way, and they score. Like, it's, I don't know. Like, it's not like the game was without controversy either, in the sense that they got 2 points, but it's not. It wasn't an 8-1 blowout.
Look, they're not playing. They're not playing well defensively. And I said to TJ the other day, they look like a team that has had 2 long playoff runs in a row. But they also look, to Alan's point, they look like a team that's feeling the pressure to perform again. And, they've got some new pieces still trying to find their place. Like, Skinner looks pretty good, but Arvidsson kind of doesn't really have a place yet. He doesn't look great for whatever reason. He's not shooting. Obviously they need Skinner to play better, but that also happened last year. Like, Skinner started horribly last year as well, and then settled in later on. So I guess we're going to have to see. And TJ and I talked about it on Tuesday Trends. Like, you're obviously, don't do anything crazy with your Oilers studs. Like, they're going to turn it around. They're still a good team. They're still a cup contender. Like, even Skinner himself, you want to hold on to him and let that team become what they should be. But hey, are you looking at another situation similar? There you go. But what is his name again? He's always with
Paratarin
telling us that McJesus was yelling because his water wasn't turning into grape juice. It was turning into grape juice instead of wine. I like that one. But yeah, like, I think you hold on your studs, but are you looking at another situation? You remember last year, it was a little bit later. It was like November. They were still sliding, and people were starting to capitalize on McDavid deals. Like, I don't know if we're at that point, like, but if they continue to struggle through October, like, you might be able to get a, you're still going to have to pay a hefty price, but like, there was a trade discussion in the Discord a couple of days ago, and one of our listeners, one of the members there, thought they overpaid for McKinnon. And I think, Alan, you saw my comment on that deal. Like, if you can get a top 5 player in the league because somebody's panicking, you overpay for that individual. You do it, right? And you go to try to find the peripheral stats that you gave up somewhere else, whether that's from the waiver or another smaller deal. Like, if you get a top 5 player or a top 2 player and you have a chance to do that, you do it, because once they turn it around and their team is playing better, they could win you the league, right? Like, you can't shy away from those types of transactions, even if at the time you feel like you overpaid, right?
There was like that post. There was that post on Reddit that, like, was right at the top, going, like, take a breath, calm down, breathe. Like, don't do what you need to do. And I remember the post right afterwards, going essentially like
panic.
You got to pick up all the guys, And it's kind of funny to think of the other guys, right? Where, obviously the studs are always going to be the studs, and then on the flip side, you have the guy, in 22, 23, you're like, you took Huberdeau 8th overall, and you're just thinking, he's a stud, and you held him all the way to his 55-point finish. And on the same train and vein, isn't there, like, Frank Vetrano? You know what I mean? Like, the guy where he's like, what the heck is this dude? Or I guess maybe, who do we think is the Frank Vetrano this 24-25 year?
Maybe not revealed to us yet. I think we have to continue to watch. But hey, that takes us right into the next storyline. Maybe it's somebody else on the Flames, because The Flames continue to stay red hot and undefeated. They won again 3-1 last night against the Hawks. It actually was a pretty good game. I didn't think the Hawks played poorly, but the Flames played really well. And like Dustin Wolf, Huberdeau, Connor Jari, Popsicle Man, Backlund, Coleman, all leading the way and looking like really great early on for fantasy. So maybe Jay, your question, maybe your answer is in the top 6 in Calgary. Maybe we've got a Popsicle Man or Connor Jari. I know TJ's high on him as a young player. I personally think he's unfortunately going to lose his great deployment and his PP1 spot once Sharangovich comes back. I haven't seen any status update on Sharangovich, but that's the spot he has right now on the power play in Calgary. But he's looked really good. That line actually has looked really good. That Backlund, Jari, and Coleman line have looked really good for the Flames. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the Flames. I really don't know what's going on there. Everybody thought they were supposed to be bad.
Right. Well, I think they
right?
could be this season's Nashville. Like we all expected them to be just bottom of the toilet, and they barely squeaked into the playoffs. I'm not saying that Calgary is a cup contender or even a playoff contender, but they could turn out to be better than we all initially maybe thought.
And I know Jay has love for the Popsicle Man because he's just, living down there on Calgary Lane. But I know Jay loves his banger specials with some scoring potential as well. He really reminds me of like Jay. I don't know if it might be a little bit before your time, but you probably remember. He reminds me of Darcy Tucker a lot, like the way that he plays.
I see what you mean.
Right? He has some offensive ability, but he will just smash everybody that has the puck defensively. Like he's a fun player to watch. Be interesting to see if he actually gets into their top 6 at some point and can actually put something on top of the Bangs in terms of offense. But it's definitely, I know, a player that's near and dear to your type of player that's near and dear to your heart.
Their team is just so young, right? Like you look at their players and you almost wonder where and when the wheels will fall off. You kind of wonder and you look and you think. And at the same time, like if Huberdeau can do even 80% of Max Huberdeau, that's going to be a pretty decent offense, you'd think. Then they still have Uyghur. Anderson could possibly like do some extra damage on the second power play. Like there's not a world where this team can't go true. But again, we always talk here on the pod about the 20 game mark, right? The 20 game marks where you kind of see most of it coming true. And I mean, they've done how many? What is the record? They're not undefeated?
They're 4-0.
Yeah, 3 or 4 now.
Yeah.
Oh, Crosby just scored the game winner as well in overtime.
Hey.
Goodness. Okay.
And maybe not super fantasy relevant, but Anderson with his hot start, man, like depending on where Calgary is come playoff time, like if they sell and what's he gonna fetch like for a team like Edmonton or something? It's like, hey, this guy can run your power play and can actually play defense.
Yeah, TJ and I talked about him on Tuesday Trends. Like, I still think his ceiling is limited because Uyghur's in front of him. Like, Uyghur looks really, really good, shoots the puck a whole lot more than Anderson does. But, you have a second-tier defenseman there that's, 40, 45 points, almost kind of locked in. Will still help you in the blocks category as well. But like you said, Alan, if they do start to kind of fall off that cliff, which you would imagine that they would, I think that's a piece that they could move out and put him in a better situation. What does he become, right?
Oh, this is a good question. Just came in from Parataran.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want me to hit this first, Jay, or do you want to hit this one first, or did you have an Anderson thought?
There was sorry, it is related to the Timo one. I was reading about it before, and the big one essentially is Timo was the fantasy relevant monster because we remember how he was in San Jose. But we have to remember that he was all that. He was the man, and he munched everything, right? All the time, all the shots, all the plays. But that guy in New Jersey is Jack Hughes. And the problem with him is that you're comparing you're comparing your impression of Timo against reality Timo. And reality Timo is just not going to get the puck compared to Jack Hughes. getting the puck. And when you have two puck dominant carriers on the same line, they don't super gel each other. They just make it so that both guys shoot less, both guys do like not as much. So I think in terms of how Keefe is approaching it, I think he's doing it better for the team, which is you split them up on the lines, you split them up on the power play, and they actually both can be pretty dominant on their respective lines and respective power plays. It just hurts his fantasy value, I think, for Timo.
I think what you just talked about, Jay, is bang on. I think they have a new coach. I think he's trying to get their offense going because they haven't been great offensively, especially on the power play. Like Dougie Hamilton, we're talking Timo Meier here, but he has 20 shots on goal in 4 games and has no points. That speaks to what's happening in New Jersey. So I think you're seeing a new coach kind of tinker with his lines and pieces. I don't know why he seems to like Nosane over Meier right now. That's who's getting the deployment over Meier. Meier is a better player in my mind, and I'm sure you guys would agree, than Nosane coming from Carolina. I don't know why Keefe is leaning on him, but he did that kind of funky shit with Jan Krook and like some of his other third liners in Toronto when he was here. He likes to tinker with the bottom 6, not saying that Meier's going to stay there, but ultimately I think right now you're seeing a Devils team that's struggling defensively, struggling offensively. So I think Keefe is kind of trying to hold some of these bigger top tier players accountable, but he's also kind of tinkering with how to get this offense going. My opinion, I've watched some of the Devils games. Meier's looked much better than last year. He looks like he's skating with more confidence. He looks like he's comfortable there. I think he's going to ultimately land on that top line. And I do agree with you, Jay. They're both shooters and have shoot first mentality. But like, I think without those two playing together, I think, you're going to hurt your team offensively in the long run. So I think give it a couple of weeks and I think it will kind of all settle into place. Like Nosane's not going to get top 6 minutes over Meier in the long term. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Alan.
Not really, no. I mean, I know last season, I think when they fired Lindy Ruff, Timo peaked up a bit, but yeah, no. And every team, every new player on a new team, new coach, whatever, go through this. You just got to give them like 10, 15 games before we can start to see what chemistry is there going to be, where they land. Yeah, so I would say don't panic yet. Even if you did draft him pretty high.
Look, I think he went like mid rounds. He wasn't going like super high from what I saw. So like, it's a guy you can be patient with, and he still has dual eligibility. He's still hitting. He's still shooting. Like he's still doing some positive things. I think you just got to wait and see how Keefe kind of settles into how he wants deployment to work. But good God, do they need to get that power play going like that? If without that power play, the Devils are going to be hurting, and they're not playing well in front of Markstrom. So it's just not pretty all around right now for them.
The other part I would say too is last season it was really catastrophic because he was drafted so early, right? I want to say like round 3, 4. But this season you kind of look and you just realize if you draft him where he was around, I can't remember which round he was taken this year, actually, maybe like 7th, 8th, but around that time, it's pretty reasonable, right? Like look at where you'd get him and look at what potential upside you'd get. That is definitely a risk worth taking. But also at that point, it's not as if there are any more up, like there's no comparable player at around that draft range where there's significant similar upside anyway. So, I guess in that case, you have to hold. I can't imagine what sort of value you'd fetch trading Timo, unless you're trading that sort of risk taking to a different manager who is trying to buy into that upside with Timo. But I think he's pretty much.
No, you're trading from position of weakness right now. Just hold.
Agreed.
Just hold.
I think he's going to be fine. Really, I do. Just like the Edmonton stock. Like you just got to wait it out, unfortunately, and wade through the fire. All right. So our last storyline before we get into injuries and returns. Just wanted to put that out there because we talked about him early on in some of the early season content. Mark Stone and his bionic, he is just on fire out the gates to start the season. He has 8 points in 4 games on 10 shots on goal. He's playing around 20 minutes a night. He's currently on that top line with Eichel and Barbashev, who are also all that whole line is on fire to start the season, boys. And he's tied for the league in scoring with Reinhart and Eichel with those 8 points. Do we think this is Mark Stone finally healthy and potentially could be back to that point per game player that he once was before he needed a robot back and 2 sets of legs? Or are we just looking at an early season hot streak as he builds chemistry with Eichel and Barbashev?
No, I think if he's healthy, this is who Mark Stone is. Even on that middling Ottawa Senators team, he was a 60, 70 point guy. And now arguably with a top 5, top 10 center in the league, and whatever cast of characters they can throw on that top line with him and on the power play. Yeah, why can't he be at least point per game if his half human, half ravioli, half robot body holds up?
That's what he was doing before all these injuries, right? Like he was a point per game guy in his first few seasons with Vegas, and then his back game, right? So I agree with you, Alan. I think if this is a truly healthy Mark Stone, even if part of him is robotic, like I think you found some gold late in your drafts if you took him, because he was going in the Huberto conversation, like in the last 3 rounds of your drafts. Like, oh wow, look, Mark Stone's healthy. We'll just take a flyer on him. He's got to be in the top 6 in Vegas with the people that they've lost. And it looks like Vegas really so far hasn't really taken a step back, even with those players that have stepped out. Because I believe they're undefeated as well, are they not? I believe so, if I'm not mistaken.
4-0?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think so. So like they're looking very solid.
3-1. Sorry, 3-1.
I know we're gonna get to one of their injuries, but it's not a guy that I believe in. So, Jay, I don't know if you have any thoughts on Stone before we get into the injuries there, but
yeah, I mean, I also look at like any team when it came down to, for example, both like Chicago from a while back and then Tampa a couple years ago, and now obviously Vegas. Like these are teams that are good teams with cup aspirations, and they will do whatever it is within their legal, cap wizardry power to win. But you look at the cap, even in like, I'm just going to Puckpedia right now. Like there's no guy that they need him to be shelved onto IR for so that they can unlock. So if anything, he is one of the necessary players they need to make sure their team gets, pretty high in the standings, win their division, and just like so they stay all sorted and good. He's been off for what? Like he's not played the regular season for almost 2 seasons straight, right? So he should be healthy. He should just be Mark Stone this season.
yeah, it would be great to see. He's a player that I've always liked watching. Like he's a shooter. You know how I have a soft spot for anybody who shoots a ton. It'd be great to see him back at full strength, and I might have to wait for a cold streak and try to go acquire him in some leagues if I can. All right, so let's move into injuries, and we have just one return to talk about before we get into the schedule, and then we'll hit the mailbag. So Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars, he's day-to-day with something minor. They didn't really elaborate on what that was. I tried to look it up before we jumped on tonight, and there still wasn't really an update. Dadanoff moves to line 2 in his spot. I don't really think that helps Dadanoff. I did see an update too that also bumped Wyatt Johnson to the first line, which obviously if you have Wyatt Johnson shares, him being on the top line is wheels up for the kid who's already looked good to start the season. Darcy Kemper, as we mentioned off the hop, day to day, for whatever reason, I guess after you give up 8 goals, you just got to tell everybody you're injured. So for the Kings, and then David Riddick got to start against Toronto tonight, who he has now given up 5. So the Kings have given up 13 goals in the last 2 games. I guess this new run and gun type of offensive game that the Kings are trying to implement this year is really not helping them defensively, and they're not getting good goaltending to boot. So maybe Phoenix Copley is going to get the next start in Kingsland coming up after tonight. And then on our Vegas Golden Knights conversation, Victor Olofsson. He left last night's game and was seen on crutches afterwards. There wasn't really an update on his status, but obviously when you're on crutches, I would imagine you're going to go week to week with a lower body injury at some point. I would agree with Alan in your note. I would think Barbashev takes the PP1 spot. I took the look at the rest of their lineup. They might swing
2D, maybe.
they might swing 2D in there, maybe Petrangelo with Theodore, or maybe Hannafin with Theodore. You may also see maybe Nicholas Wall rotate in there. I know he rotated in there last year when they kind of got decimated with injuries. You could also see that what's his name,
Dorofeyev.
Dorofeyev. You could also see him rotate in there. He hasn't had a great start to the season, but also another young offensive player that could rotate in there. So watch that deployment. I was never really a big believer in Olofsson. I think everybody knows what he is. He's a shoot first winger that doesn't do a whole lot else. He can finish, but he never really got anything more than 14 to 15 minutes time on ice in Buffalo. I didn't really see that role changing, even if he's with his buddy Eichel, kind of a power play specialist forward. Good guy to stream from Vegas. I'm sure there was some people holding him because he had two goals out the gate, but doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of contributing overall statistically to your wider range category leagues. And then Sean Jersey in Utah, he's week to week with an upper body injury after their game on Monday. I did see a statement from the team saying that he's going to be out a while or the foreseeable future. So I would assume this means Sergachev's going to get like 40 minutes a night, and Valimaki will kind of clean up the rest of the minutes available. He will most likely get the PP2 spot, I would imagine. I don't really think this is massive for Valimaki in terms of how that changes his value, guys. But Sergachev, this just gives Sergachev all the runway to be the guy on defense in Utah, which is, TJ and I talked it on Tuesday Trends, and I don't know if you guys have seen any of their games yet, guys. Looks like a team that's ready to compete in the Western Conference. Looks fun. They got a lot of young pieces that look really exciting, in Doan and Gunther. That first line's clicking real nicely, and Hayton, Keller, and Schmaltz. Hopefully that line can actually stay healthy this season and see what they can do. I know Alan Ingram holds a special place in your heart. He's looked good to start the season, and the Veggie Man has not. So it looks like it's Ingram's goal to hold on a young and up and coming team that actually looks like they have a fan base now and somewhere to play, not called Arizona at a university college setting. And then a return tonight that has something to note. JJ Peterka did return from his concussion to the Sabres lineup. As Jay said, as we were kind of going there, Pittsburgh did win 6-5 in overtime, but Peterka scored. I didn't see his time on ice or his shots on goal, but he was back on the top line with Thompson and Tuck, if I'm not mistaken. But he was on power play 2. For whatever reason, Buffalo's keeping Jason Zucker on power play 1. I'm assuming that's going to change, but I really don't know why Jason Zucker's on power play 1. I don't really know why that helps their power play at all. When you have the likes of Zach Benson that you could have put there when Peterka was out, or Jack Quinn, or just one of your up and coming young offensive players, you chose to put Jason Zucker there. So I would imagine that doesn't hold now that Peterka's back. For those that I did see a couple of questions kind of circulating in the socials of why is Peterka on PP2. I would imagine it's just easing him back in from the concussion, and that he'll take that spot from Zucker once he's good to go. And obviously he is good to go because he scored. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on the injuries and Peterka's return, boys, before we jump into the schedule.
No.
One quick thing I would mention too is that I don't think Vegas has a plethora of options aside from Barbashev. I think Barbashev is probably safely the guy. He was picked up a lot already because they had a great week 1 schedule. But the other one I would say too is long term, good probably target either side of the trade or either side around trade deadline would be probably Shea Theodore, depending on which way you believe it. He's going into unrestricted free agency in July, right? Whereas they've already signed up Pietrangelo and Hannafin. They still have like 3 years, 4 years to go. So reasonably speaking, if Vegas is, like it depends where they are or whatnot, but it depends if they're willing to basically just see Theodore out and hope that they do well this playoffs and kind of like just like Montour with Florida last season, kind of ride out with victory into the sunset. If not, then Shea Theodore is basically like an immediate ticket, a trade deadline to any other team. And you'd imagine whichever team gets him is probably going to stick him immediately on power play 1. So just for long-term trade options. And the second one too is possible deadline trade. Utah has like 8 million in cap space, just like tons of cap space available. That team, if they continue their hot start, that is a team that could do some serious damage. And yeah, especially with that injury we just described with Jersey, who is on the Utah pipeline? Like there is nobody. There's Sergachev and there is Sergachev. That is it. So that is a team that needs more depth. Just percolate some of those thoughts in week 2 for, far into the weeks.
Jay's already strategically planning well ahead of me and Alan at this point. So
trade targets.
Pick Jay's brain if you want to talk trade targets on the Discord for sure. My brain is not activated in that space just yet. So, but I knew Jay's would be. So why don't we do the mailbag as we wrap up tonight? And Alan, why don't you kick us into the weekend schedule and how we can help the listeners out there lock in that, or to have the best chance to lock in those week 2 victories.
Yeah. So there is only one team with 3 games for the rest of the week. The San Jose Sharks have Thursday, Friday, Sunday. I would say just go check on Toffoli. But Granlund, Eklund, Zetterlund, all those Lunds down under are very lowly owned.
The three Lunds.
My 3 Lunds. Jake Wallman, power play 1 defenseman, 12%. But then Friday, Sunday, your sweet spot guys. Anaheim, they see Colorado Friday, LA on Sunday. Minty, 10%. He's power play 1 right now, depending on which unit you believe is power play 1. Cutter Gauthier, the rookie. Leo Carlson, now not on load management, and Kaloran. All those guys are like 20% owned and less. Colorado, they see Anaheim Friday, San Jose Sunday. Really, who is healthy on that team? Ross Colton and Casey Middlestat have somehow, by attrition, they're your power play 1 guys that are probably available. But the only problem is they're center only. But being Friday, Sunday off nights, you should have no problem getting them. Maybe a sleeper pick, but Oliver Shillington. He is now paired with Makar with Devon Tays out. He had some offensive pedigree in Calgary. I forget how he ended up in Colorado, but I don't know. You guys, maybe if you need that defensive stream, he might be worth a look. And I'm sure he's like 5% owned.
Let's be real here. Colorado has nothing to do with their health. It has nothing to do with what's going on with the lack of offense from Makar. McKinnon's off to a slow start. Georgiev has been horrendous.
Terrible.
Horrendous. They have no goaltending. I don't understand why they haven't put that young kid back in the net at this point.
I think Anunin got lit up too now, and then I think we have it somewhere in the notes. They claimed Capo Kakinen off waivers, but they right again in true battered wife syndrome, man. Maybe that joke's not great. It's Stockholm syndrome. They shackled themselves
Edit
back
that out.
to.
Edit that out.
We're live. That's the problem. It's Stockholm syndrome, man. They're going back to friggin' Georgiev tonight against Boston.
Yeah,
still no goals yet. So
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get that into the streaming spot. We have something to touch on that. We'll talk a bit more about Georgiev, but my God, Like they look
Oh yeah.
like you got two Western Conference teams looking like the Oilers from the beginning of the season last year, and one of them is the Oilers. It's very confusing, and they both have cup aspirations. But carry on, Alan. Continue.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, they've been one of the teams to stream from all day or all week long. They see Carolina on Friday, Winnipeg on Sunday. I don't know if I want anyone from that team really. But Anthony Beauvillier top line with Crosby right now 6%. Ricky Rax 14%. Bunting, if you want some bangs, I would say 21%. And for some reason, just go check on Rust. He's only 58% owned. Wow.
And it
But
really
yeah,
looks,
I don't like those matchups, guys.
no, the matchups aren't great, and they can continue to look like they're just rotating the wings in that top six. It looks like they've gone back to their traditional power play with Rust in that fifth spot. So that doesn't really bode well for Ricky Rax and Bunting and Beauvillier. I know TJ's high on Beauvillier as long as he sticks with Crosby. But Beauvillier is another guy like Olofsson, like never really done anything. Supposed to be a finisher, doesn't get a lot of time on ice. I agree with you. I don't like the matchups, but look, if you were a smart GM and you got in on them early, you're going to get 3 games from them, and you don't have to stream from the San Jose Sharks, right? Because they play tonight, and then they play Friday, and they play Sunday. Like I did that in a couple spots with Ricky Rax. He scored in their last game. He didn't score tonight, but the big heavy minutes are going to Crosby, Malkin, Carlson, Letang. They're not going to their peripheral wingers, right? So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And then lastly, Winnipeg, they see San Jose Friday, Pittsburgh Sunday. I feel like if you want to get a grab before, this might be the better team to grab from. They seem to be also on fire, a little bit on the back of Hellboy maybe, but Velarde for some reason down to 33% owned. I think they took Jay's advice and like, Sunday we can drop him and then hope that no one picks him up until Friday.
He was the most dropped player in Yahoo on Sunday. He was like dropped by like 4,000 GMs. Like this is a top line winger on a top power play, and he just got punted into the sun.
He wasn't playing until Friday in week 2 anyway, so they're like, we'll probably get him back.
Or as maybe guys with next day ads, so it was like, I still get Sunday out of him, and then maybe I'll claim him on Friday. But Cole Perfetti also in top 6. He's 12% owned. That Lowry line, man, it was that's part of what helped Jay get the edge on me last week. Was I think you had all 3 of them at one point, like Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton, man. Like that's great. That's great. They're getting depth. Winnipeg's getting depth scoring. Hellboy he's showing why he's the Vezina champion. Even those guys are worth a stream in your deeper leagues.
It's so fascinating too, right? Like you look at some of the names. I'm just circling back to that Colorado setup, and it's crazy because I was clicking around, on Yahoo and whatnot, and it's strange because I couldn't find their goalies, and I was like, "What's going on?" Like, I'm like, "Wait, I got the team, I got goaltenders," and then I realized Yahoo defaults to season totals, and the problem is it goes from positive to negative, and all their starters were negative because they had such terrible weeks all the way through. So just scroll all the way down through the goalies to find their actual starters. That's probably what Colorado does. I think Alan said it last year, right? They
0G in real life.
They do real life 0G. So if anything, it's just Georgiev at some point will, he'll prove. I know that Ricky Rax can too. Oh my goodness. But I think I read it online where it said instead of Georgiev, we should just all commit to calling him Forgiev and just not let
past him,
just not let him live it down. And then on the flip side, we should rename him Injustice Noonan because he's obviously done something, what has he done to deserve this and not get the starts instead of Georgiev? But I wonder what the visa issues they're talking about for Kakko could be. Is it the moment he clears the visa issues that he's just going to waltz into that crease, starter's crease?
If Georgiev gets lit up tonight, he might very well walk directly into 1A position when he gets to the U.S.
Well, speaking of Georgiev, we can move on to goalies now. I mean, really, the only team that has like a back-to-back this weekend is Carolina, and both those guys are over 80% owned. You can check, but it's probably not worth it. But no, we got a couple of guys here probably worth talking about as spot start / long-term pickups. Kind of guys we've all mentioned tonight. Justice Anunin should Capo Kakinen still have visa issues. Georgiev, they finally step away from him. Justice Anunin, would be the next guy in line. Blomqvist didn't he get 2 wins in his 2 starts?
Yeah, he's got
and he gets the win tonight.
And he gets a relief tonight. Oh my
He's
goodness.
got a 906 without the win tonight. I don't know what he posted tonight, and he's got 3 wins. Jari's not starting in the next Pittsburgh game. There's no chance.
God, Pittsburgh Penguins and starting goaltenders losing their jobs, like that's a tale as old as time, it feels like. But this, Craig, I really like this last one. Mrazek,
another one of your boys.
Owned.
I wanted to throw him in there, man. And he looks good, man. He looks solid, and Chicago looks marginally better. Like
I'm scared. I'm scaring myself with how much I'm starting to turn and believe in Chicago. I'm like, wait, no, this is a horrible team, but I don't know.
I still feel like I would only want to play him in a volume league. Like if I'm depending on wins or a great percentage, like for a Cats league, no.
I think he's just going to be one of those guys that like you're going to be able to pick him up for a spot start, a goalie stream if you need an extra start in an opportunistic matchup. I would imagine you're probably looking at him for when they're at home, right? Although he was better on the road last year, him personally, he was better on the road last year than he was at home. But I think the team just is marginally better in front of him. Seth Jones is healthy. You know, you have Bertuzzi now. You have Turbo, who's looked much more comfortable and more like himself playing with Bedard. They moved Foligno back up onto the Bedard line yesterday as well. They just, like you said, Alan, like they're playing a similar type of hockey to Philly. They actually look like they're like playing a structured, relaxed game and trying to like slow the game down defensively, which only helps, you know, a sporadic spaz goalie like Mrazek kind of settle in and be more stable, right? Jay and I know what Mrazek truly is when he has no help in front of him. He's a mitigated disaster. So that speaks volumes to, you know, what he's been able to do over the last year and a bit as, you know, an above average goalie. So like, I agree with you. I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go get this guy and keep, well, maybe if you have Jari, Kemper and David Riddick as your goalies, maybe you're going to drop Jari and keep Mrazek for a little bit. But yeah, like I think he's a good streaming candidate and he's probably going to be available in most leagues to stream when there's an opportunistic matchup. And you know what, to Jay's point, if Chicago continues to gradually improve as the season goes on, like maybe he does become something that's okay, right? Like maybe he doesn't go to hero G status, but maybe he goes to like marginal G status, which is not 0G status, right?
And the scary thing is too, like I might truly have had the right gut feeling about being scared because Chicago, despite their better start to start the season, is still like they're third last in their division, and they're like, oh, okay, you know, like they weren't dead last, like with miles and miles away from the nearest team. And then you look, oh, which team is below them? The Nashville Predators and Colorado Avalanche. And you're like, oh God, so they basically are last. Those teams are not going to finish the season, you know, like below Chicago. October 16th, 2024, famous last words. No, I'm joking. So, anywho, like maybe this team is still, you know, learning the ropes and improving, but it's like it's better. It's a better early start than I imagined. And they didn't win against scrubs and bums, right?
Was it Edmonton, right?
Yeah, they beat Edmonton.
Yeah. Like they've played well, man, against some good teams, and that's not easy to do to start the season when you have so many new pieces in your lineup, right? Like looking for chemistry, looking for who works with who. Yeah, but Paratarin, my man, like your key sentence in there is should. Decord should, but they've already started doing exactly what they did last year when they were both healthy. They're basically rotating starts 50-50, and I don't really seeing that change early in the season because Seattle's still also trying to figure out where their new pieces fit in and how they're going to work and gel. So I think they probably just want stability in the back end. They know they can lean on both of them in the Gerber baby and Decord. Decord has looked solid to start the season, there's no doubt, but so Grubauer has as well. So I would imagine that 50-50 split is going to continue because that's what they did in the latter half of last year. They may ride the hot hand as the season kind of goes, but you're probably going to see a really firm rotation there, unfortunately, because I have seen Decord in a couple waiver wires where I'm thin in goalie and I'm like, do I pick him up? Like, should I have him instead of this guy? And it's like, fuck, he's not going to get the majority of starts. It's going to be 50-50. And like on a given week where they only have 3 games, it's like, God damn, he's most likely, where are they in the rotation? Is he getting 1 or 2 this week? Like,
and the sucky part with Seattle as well is it's just that situation where the real life NHL best play does not align with the real fantasy best play. It's just they want the 1A, 1B to never solve itself for the rest of the season. And then they want eventually, around, I want to say like April, maybe not even April, maybe late March for like one guy to kind of really, really ride hot. And then they just like sail that into the playoffs. If, like this team is probably as baked in 16, 17, 18th in the NHL as you could possibly bake in a team, right? That's like solid cores, pretty much. You're sure they're not the worst team in the league, but you're definitely sure they're not President's Trophy material. That sort of mediocrity in the middle is not going to have that sort of, Helly style, Sorrow style, heavy goalie.
Well, on a positive note from Seattle, Montour's looked great to start the season with them. Like he's looked excellent. He looks back to full health. Like he looks like kind of like Montour from, I'm not going to say he's going to drop that 75-point season because it's a very different team he's playing with, but he looks really good in Seattle in terms of how he's skating, shooting, manning that power play. Dunn missed a couple games already. So I think, for those that were in on the Montour change of scenery, I think it's going to be positive. Like he's still going to do Montour things. I think he's a 50+ point defenseman, easily shots on goal, hits. Like I think he's a positive for the Montour owners out there. And who wants to hit on just the next week prep in terms of stuff to keep in mind as you get into your Sundays, if you have pickups available or anything like that, before we jump into the mailbag here? Yeah,
I would just say essentially it's a, oh geez, Alan, I just cut you off. I don't know if you were.
No, that was it, man. Let's next week prep.
Yeah. Like the basic weird one is, I think in all the times we've done, even like all of last season, we never had a no back-to-back Saturday, Sunday. Like this is really weird for this week too, for there not to be a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, but there isn't, right? There is only a Friday, Saturday back-to-back, and there is only a Friday, Sunday off night. And so I would really I don't think you ever need to stream a guy thinking, oh, it's a Friday, Saturday back-to-back, mainly because all your guys, you're going to have a full lineup and a full bench anyway on Saturday. But I think it makes that Wednesday and Friday this week particularly important, especially a Friday, I guess, like the day after tomorrow, where you want to punt the week earlier if possible. And you want to punt it before your Saturday, and you want all your ads, if you have any left still this week, to be either devoted to, I guess, consolidating your win, and you'll have to use it and burn it to pick up a Sunday ad if you need to consolidate the win. But ideally, if you can punt the week early, or you can secure the win already, then you can prep for week 3. Week 3, the key thing to remember is Toronto and Tampa are the only 2 teams playing on Monday. So, if you can get that guy early, then you can get the extra games. I don't even have a guy listed immediately off my head for any available dudes from Toronto. I'm just going to scroll quick and snag them. I guess if you want to go Steven Lorentz, he's getting, he's like some serious bangs and hits and around. He scored with 11 minutes time on ice. But I guess OEL, right? Like Oliver Ekman-Larsson's getting some power play time, and might be worth seeing. They're saying he got some power play 1 run. Am I
Yeah.
seeing this correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think even tonight, I think he got something on that power play.
He's
Oh, God.
quarterbacking PP1 now.
Yeah.
They switched
Well-
that in the last game, and he's getting like over 3.5 minutes time on ice on the power play now.
Go grab. Oh, he's 23%. Go grab Oliver Ekman-Larsson now. It's not even that he's going to do this forever, but it's crazy that the Toronto power play 1 is available for 23% ownership. So go grab him now, and you will be watching him play on Monday because there's nobody else to watch. In Tampa, I would say, geez, I don't even know. Like let's see Tampa.
I would say Nick Paul, Connor Geeky. Connor,
Paul.
I think
Paul,
he's the
absolutely.
geeky.
Yeah.
Darren Radish, I saw he was still getting reps on power play 1. They're trying him out in the Stamkos spot.
Yeah, look, I think anybody that's getting power play deployment and or top 6 deployment in those 3 teams, New Jersey, Toronto, and Tampa, is an important grab for next week. You're just going to have to kind of be quick on the trigger with guys that are peripheral pieces, like a Nyes, like a McCann, right? Like in the top 6 in Toronto, like they see nothing on the power play, but you might be able to sprinkle some points in, some hits. Well, and we want to touch on OEL. Look, very clear. Mitsubiski's, what was his name? It's like a
Mitsubishi.
I think he was asked. I'm assuming he meant OEL.
Yeah, I think as long as OEL has PP1, like he's been logging big, heavy minutes. He's been logging 23 plus time on ice. Tonight he had 450 on the power play. Like as long as he's getting that deployment, if you can grab him now. He's doing hits. He's doing some hitting. He's doing some blocking. He's shooting the puck. He had another 3 shots on goal tonight. I believe he had 2 assists tonight as well. So he is going to get in it. And Paratarin, I would go OEL as long as he's got that deployment over Rasmus Anderson.
Oh, absolutely. And schedule for next week.
And schedule for next week. I would imagine if people are tuning in to us and listening to us, or even considering, where to go with their 4th defenseman, OEL is going to be heavily owned going into next week and probably beyond. Their power plays already looked better with him on it in terms of puck movement. I think they scored 2 power play goals tonight, and it was quite frankly anemic until they moved him there a game and a half ago. Riley just unfortunately is not the puck mover that he is. I would just caution this, and I said this on Tuesday Trends with OEL with TJ. OEL did this last year in Florida, and he showed that as the season went on, he cannot keep up with logging heavy minutes and being productive while he's playing 22 plus minutes a night.
He
right?
got that deployment in Florida
because
they had
Montour was injured.
Injuries, yeah.
And he proved that he could do it, but I think he also showed that it wore him down. And by the playoffs, he was only playing 16, 17 minutes a night in the 3rd pairing role. Obviously, they still won the cup, but he wasn't, a prime piece come later in the season. And Florida had way more depth because they got healthy, so it wasn't that big of an issue. Toronto doesn't have that luxury. So if he does wear down again, don't be surprised if Riley gets PP1 back at some point. But I grabbed him in our Super Bangers leagues, Jay, so don't even look. I grabbed him already. He's mine. I'm gonna ride that deployment. I did see in a couple of my other leagues he got snatched up today as well. So ride that deployment until it ends. Especially the heavy power play minutes that he's racking up right now, over 4 minutes a game, almost 5 minutes on the power play tonight. I'm going to be all in, at least in the short term, for OEL.
And I mean, the important part as well is it depends on which side of the streaming spectrum you go, right? But no matter what happens in week 13 or week 20, maybe not week 23, because week 23 is playoffs. We care. But week 10 and week 15, it's so far away, right? You're just trying to win 2, try to win week 3. And for that, OEL is key. So I would say like hop on it for the managers. I would also say too, it's one of those where like you look at next week and Toronto plays 4 games. So week 3, Toronto is a very good target. But inversely, even if they've blown up the Kings tonight, they don't play until Saturday, and that's the only other game they play against the Rangers. So that's not a very enticing matchup for the rest of this week. So I would say it would be important, if possible, to time your OEL ad, right? Like I would say add them maybe like, I don't know, wake up early on Sunday, before your kids get up and, like snag them and then, go on or try to snag them before the Rangers game and, like get the Rangers and then also the back-to-back on Monday, Tuesday in week 3. But anywho, these are just some extra thoughts. OEL, 23% crazy value.
All right, so let's dive into the mailbag.
We got the soundbite. We got a soundbite.
Hit it, Alan.
You got
Hit
mail.
Mailbag.
Mailbag. All right, so we're gonna hit some mailbag questions to end off the week 2 weekend preview, and then
Rapid fire.
We'll do some rapid fire. Jay, that means a couple sentences. All right, give people the answers. All right, not the deep dive, Jay. We can do that as the season progresses. We got 5 questions here, and I want to get to them all in a rapid fire fashion. Okay. So the first one is from Bravest Face 666 from the Discord, and it's a guy we've already brought up. What are our thoughts on Wallman? And just to give us some perspective here before we have a little bit of a roundtable on him, he has 1 point in 3 games. He has 7 shots on goal, 4 hits, 8 blocks. He's averaging 24 minutes time on ice to start the year and north of 3 minutes time on ice on the power play. He's currently on the second the second pairing and on PP1 as we referenced before. Look, I know what Jay's going to say, so I'm going to steal it from him so he doesn't talk too long. If you need help on defense, the power play 1 quarterback, what appears to be a better than last year power play for the Sharks. This year, Toffoli's looked good in that spot. Granlund looks good. I think they'd be even better if Celebrini wasn't injured. If you have, a guy that isn't a power play 1 quarterback as your 4th defenseman, or you carry 5 defensemen, I'd be all over Wallman because he does do stuff peripherally, specifically blocks. It looks like he looks like he's upped his shots on goal rate with his new role. So I would not shy away from picking him up. And again, Jay would probably say this, so I'm going to steal it from him. San Jose has nothing else on the back end, so he probably has no competition for PP1 whatsoever. So as long as he continues to hold that position, he will certainly have value as a depth defenseman on any fantasy hockey team, really, especially if San Jose can score at a better clip than last year, which won't be hard because they didn't do a whole lot of scoring last year at all. So I'm in on Wallman, guys. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, agree. Especially in that he has no competition. No one's coming to that power play. It's his.
It's a horrific desert. I think the next guy is Thrun. Thrun's on 15 minutes a night. It's literally just Wallman. What's his percentage? 12%. Get him.
Yeah, he's only 12% owned.
Yeah, very good. Like 3rd, 4th defenseman.
And equally, I would put him on the same Cam Fowler level where it's like get him when the schedule's good and don't fall in love with him and be afraid to drop him because you're probably better off streaming. And if you end up losing him, don't feel like the world is over. There's always going to be another person to target in terms of the schedule. But if you need a D, like 12% PP1 QB is amazing.
Don't forget, I know he's not Carlson, but Carlson had an astronomical explosion season 2 years ago on the same team with similar pieces around him. No, he's not Carlson, but if he holds that strong and those chugging, like I would be surprised if he doesn't hit that 50-point ceiling, right? Surprised. And then you're getting the blocks on top of that, sprinkling in some shots on goal, sprinkling in some hits. Like that doesn't come easy, especially later in the season, right? When as we all know, the defensive replacements on the waiver get real thin come December in most fantasy hockey leagues, right?
Another equivalent is to think, oh God, if he gets hurt, you're thinking of picking up Thrun and consider how horrific that option might be. So while you can take Wallman, like go for Wallman. Like, yeah, go for Wallman.
All right. So we jump
right.
into question number 2 from Odd Pounding from the Discord. I don't know if that's like a sexual reference or something, but it just makes me very uncomfortable.
It's an
but
odd
hey,
pounding.
if that's your slice of cake, I'm all for it.
Would it be
so
better if it was an even pounding? Anyways.
So Odd Pounding from the Discord, he asks, what's going on with Jake DeBrusk? And I bring some perspective here. He has 2 points in his first 3 games with Vancouver. He has 6 shots on goal. He's still on line 2 with Pettersson. He's on power play 1. He has 4 hits, 3 blocks. He's averaging around 17 minutes time on ice during that span. His time on ice has declined over the first 3 games. So he started, I think, with just over 18. Then he was at 16 and a half. And then he was just around 16. However, he's been getting stronger power play time on ice over that same span. To me, that's pretty good production and a good place to be in Vancouver overall. He's a dual eligible winger. Especially for a guy who's new to the team, he's already produced offensively. He's giving you peripheral stats. He's still on PP1, getting good minutes on PP1 too. I think he's just a guy you just be patient with, and I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But he's not anything more than a 60-point player in my mind. He never has been, right? So if your expectation was he was going to go to Vancouver and explode, because he's playing with the likes of Pettersson and Miller, I don't think that was ever the reality. I think he's a good top 6 winger. For fantasy, he's good because you can play him a left wing or right wing, and he's going to sprinkle in stats across all the major statistical categories for fantasy. So I think he has value. I think he's probably going to be in and around that 55, 60-point threshold with some hits, some blocks, and shots on goal. Maybe push the 25 goal mark, depending on where he builds chemistry with Miller or Pettersson, depending on where he fits in on that top 6 ultimately. But I don't think there's anything to worry here, guys. I don't know what you think.
No. I'd say at that stat line, he's someone we'd recommend as a streamer if Vancouver had a good schedule. And a little bit of context, like I know the game against Tampa, Vancouver only scored once, and I think DeBrusk took at least 1 penalty, so that would have cut into his time on ice. But yeah, I'd say this is not a guy who's going to cost you a week, but on a week where Vancouver's got a good schedule, this would be someone you pick up to try to help you win that week.
Yeah.
I mean, the other one too is like DeBrusk, like that team, I think carries so much expectation, right? Like whatever happens in 23-24, I think sometimes us as fantasy managers, we kind of imagine like the exact same teams that were good will continue to be exactly as good the following season. And maybe that's part of how we felt when we saw Vancouver. Like Vancouver's still not won a game this season yet, right? Like this is a team that's, like they were on a 3rd string goalie by the end of last season. And I think that
Shelovs has not looked like Shelovs of playoffs to start the year. That is for damn sure. He's looked quite bad.
And I mean, you want game states that, like, the thing with winning teams as well, and I think that helps fantasy fantasy managers to understand, is you can have players that are producing like crazy, even on bad teams, but it depends on how the game states go. If you have teams that are completely leaking goals left, right, and center, like the 6-5 firefights or even the 8-7 firefights, it's great for your fantasy teams. But when you have games that are tight, when you have games that are, like almost wretched, so to speak, with like, guys just dumping the puck in, chipping 5 to 10 seconds off the clock each shift, like that's not a great fantasy player, so to speak, like, or a great fantasy team to target and own. And I mean, isn't that exactly kind of how Jake DeBrusk has built his like success in his career around, like being that gritty player that can give you that extra oomph and can also have a little bit of production? It's not like this guy has been, a Bedard style player where he goes to grab the puck and dominate each possession once he's on the ice. So I mean, 2 points, 3 games, you know, like this is pretty mediocre, but that's kind of pretty much what Jake DeBrusk, you know, was on.
He's a complimentary piece. That's what he was in Boston, right? He had one good year in Boston where I believe he had 67 or 68 points, like pushed that 70-point threshold. Other than that, he hasn't really done that in his career, right? So I don't think he was going to be much more in Vancouver unless his time on ice went up. And is he going to maybe push the 20-minute threshold? That's never really how Vancouver's rolled their wingers, right? They give that heavy chug minutes to Miller and Pettersson and what's that guy with the weird name? That's their 3C. It's like 3 letters.
Oh, Pius Suter?
Yeah, Pius Suter.
Yeah.
There we go. So they chug minutes down the middle, and with their defense, they don't chug minutes with their wings, right? So, and they seem to rotate their wings through their top 9. Like Connor Garland had several times where he was on PP1 last year. So yeah, I think DeBrusk's going to be fine. I just don't think he's going to be great, right? Okay, so that actually leads us into our third question from JHAR11 from the Discord.
We missed one.
No, I'm doing it just because it coincides with Jake DeBrusk.
Right.
Because they're playing together, they're on the same line. But JHAR11's question is, are we worried about Elias Pettersson? Obviously off to another slow start this season. I know it's in a small sample size, but we all remember what he did to start last year. He did settle in and become a second half producer. But it looks like to me, guys, and I only watched bits and pieces of Vancouver's games. If Raj was here, he would have better perspective. But, you know, to me, it looks like a player that his give a shit level seems to be hit or miss on a nightly basis. Tons of talent, has all the skill in the world, but I think he's struggling right now with something between the ears. And I don't know if that's easily fixed or that's on him to fix or the organization to fix. My biggest concern, and I looked it up before we jumped on, is his shots on goal to start the year are almost nothing. I think he has a 2 shots on goal game, a 1 shots on goal game, and a 0. That's not good for arguably your best player, who's supposed to be what, a 90-point floor player, right? Give or take, maybe push 100 if we're talking him having a great season. You got to shoot the puck if you're that type of player, and for him to come out the gates not shooting, that would be my concern. However, overall, I really think Vancouver has no choice but to lean on him. He is arguably their best player. If you want to say JT Miller is okay, I would tend to agree with that JT Miller is their best player, but some would argue that it's Pettersson. They're going to have to lean on him. They need him to produce. They need him to be their second or best player anyways. Again, I think it's just a player you need to be patient with. He's, you know, if it's a face-off league, he contributes there. He hits, he blocks. Like, he is quite a good two-way centerman. You may just have to, you know, weather the storm and wait for his offensive game to catch up to those peripheral contributions. I don't know what you guys think, but I wouldn't worry because of the small sample size. But yeah, he's showing a trend that's not good for a top-tier player over the last year and a bit. Even though he did come out of it late last year, he still was very inconsistent, even in the playoff run, and kind of disappeared at times. You really don't like to see that from, you know, one of your top players. So I think you got to be patient with a guy like that. You drafted him high. I would imagine in your first 4 rounds, you can't just, you know, if there's somebody willing to pay you something good, yeah, move him. But it's got to be in that upper echelon tier of what, top 20 player, right? Top 15 player, right? I'd
say, yeah, you're trading from position of weakness. Like I've said already several times this episode. Yeah. Like, why he's another guy you just got to kind of hold.
And I mean, too, like, it ties exactly with that DeBrusk question, right? Where, it's blanking on me. Who are Pettersson's line mates last season?
They rotated. I think he played a lot with Garland. He played some with Miller on the top line.
Right.
Podkolzin,
Mikheyev when he came back.
Right. Okay.
When he wasn't hurt. So DeBrusk is definitely an upgrade on Mikheyev. He's playing with DeBrusk and
I think it's Danton Heinen.
No, Danton Heinen was up on the top line with Miller, which is wild. But
is it with Arshdeep Baines?
Let me see here. I'll pull it up quick. I don't even know who that is, but sure. Right now, that line is Danton Heinen, Pedersen, and DeBrusk. Arshdeep Baines is and Besser on the top line.
Right, and it's, I guess in some ways it's correlative. I mean, there's different schools of thought, so to speak, specifically with stacking lines or not stacking lines. And for me, I like having correlative success. I like having the lines together in the sense that if they do well, then you get the assist and the goal. But yeah, when it dries up, it dries up. So yeah, if you're worried about DeBrusk, then reasonably you're worried about, you're worried about Pedersen as well. I think Alan said everything that needed to be said. You're trading from a position of weakness anyway. So, yeah.
If Pedersen doesn't Pedersen, Vancouver is absolutely screwed. Like, they cannot be the team they were last year with just JT Miller and Quinn Hughes. Like, they need offense. And Besser hasn't started as hot as he did last year. Obviously, that was going to be very hard for him to repeat. Like, if Pedersen doesn't Pedersen, Vancouver's in trouble. Okay, we got a couple more here. So we're going to go to T Marshall 31 from the Discord. He asks, any chance Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri push the 30 goal mark and retake power play 1? I stacked them this year, expecting them both to be on the top power play unit, and now they're on PP2. I have a very simple answer to this one, and it's not anything complicated. Nelson will push the 30 goal mark. You shouldn't have stacked Nelson and Palmieri. I wouldn't have done that. Nelson will probably see some time on PP1. I don't think Palmieri will unless there's injuries. They seem to like that new young kid who I cannot pronounce his name, who's not right now getting second line and power play 1 deployment. If I had to guess, Nelson will trickle in with him. And I just looked, it looks to be the case already. Nelson's power play time is still kind of pushing that 3 minutes power play time per game to start the season. He's just not on the top unit when it's deployed. Palmieri's power play time seems to be not a lot. I would say Palmieri is more valuable with the Islanders if there's injuries, not as a mainstay in their offensive cog. I think Palmieri could push the 20 goal mark. I certainly don't think he's going to push the 30 goal mark. I like Brock Nelson a lot. He shoots a shit ton. And I think, he's been in and around that 30 goal mark for the last few seasons. I don't know why he wouldn't be able to do it again, even if he isn't consistent on PP1. That's my thought. I think that's pretty straightforward to me. Nelson, good. Palmieri, not good and old. Move on.
I was trying to remember where I saw it, but yeah, Brock Nelson, I think, is like an elite category. It was, I think it was like 5 or 6 players that were 30 goal scorers consecutive years, and it was just, you see all the classic names, and then Brock Nelson at the bottom, and it just jutted out so glaringly. But yeah, like Brock Nelson is probably fantasy goldmine for whenever and wherever he'd end up getting picked. You don't get 30 goal centers just everywhere. And definitely not consistent 30 goal centers everywhere. So inversely for Kyle Palmieri, I've always seen Kyle Palmieri on waiver wire, so he's not a guy I'm targeting in terms of drafting anyways. So like Palmieri should definitely be dropped and added and should be safely dropped. Like, you almost want to think of him as like your safe waiver wire roster spot where no one's going to get him because you'll always be able to pick him back up. If you do that with Brock Nelson, he's gone and he will never come back. So yeah, drop Palmieri, but don't do that with Nelson.
Alan, any thoughts?
Let's hit that last question, man.
All right, let's hit that last question and we'll get the hell out of here. And we're not parking the van cab anymore, boys. We are full go on a second line for 5-hole fantasy hockey. So let's get this last question in and we'll say goodnight to the people out there. So Emerald Flames, our boy from the Super Bangers League, one of the GMs from the Discord and in the Super Bangers League with Jay and myself. This one is another good, quick one for me in terms of my answer. Do you have faith in Cousins turning his shots into goals, and by extension, do you have any faith in the Sabres in general turning it around? Well, they turned it around tonight, even though they still lost. They scored 5 goals, but here's my answer to Cousins. Yes, I have concerns on Dylan Cousins. His time on ice has been very inconsistent to start the year. He's had 2 games with over 21 minutes. He's had 2 games under 16 minutes, and he's had one in the middle of like 18, almost 19 minutes. However, what's concerning to me is that his power play time is also very inconsistent. And tonight they scored 5 goals, and he did absolutely nothing except 3 shots on goal. He only played 15-51, and he only had 1 minute 23 seconds on the power play. I really don't know if Cousins is the player we saw. That's awesome.
Man, amazing.
I don't know if Cousins is the player he was 2 years ago anymore. I think he might just be a complimentary piece in Buffalo, especially with the rising emergence of Paterka, of Benson, of hopefully Quinn coming back from that ruptured Achilles. Um, I think Cousins can contribute in a league that has PIMs, that has face-offs. He does shoot. Even his shots on goal, guys, have been very inconsistent this year. Like I said, tonight he had 3 shots on goal, but their previous game he only had 2. The game before that he had 6. The game before that he only had 1, and the game before that he had 7. So he seems to be off to a very inconsistent start for me. And it looks like the team is leaning on some of their younger pieces over him currently, and it's still a small sample size. However, this was also a trend last year with them when they were kind of scratching and clawing for offense. It didn't really seem like they wanted to rely on Cousins for that. So yeah, I do have some concerns, and I've quite frankly I've dropped him in a couple of places to open up a streaming spot where I did have kind of confidence coming out of the gate, but I don't like the utilization and I don't like the inconsistency right now.
He's also C only, so there's gonna be somebody else that's just like, more valuable, more productive at that moment in time. I don't want to say, and obviously, yeah, there's always a counter punch and a counter argument and everything. But in general, I don't think week 2 is crazy. Like, there's always, this is early, and then there's technically every week matters, right? We're 4% through the season already in terms of fantasy. Your wins, you want to secure and lock in wins as soon as possible. And right now, if he's getting no points, nothing in 4 games, there's got to be someone on the wire that can do a little more right now. And when their schedule opens up and is a little better, hopefully he's around. And if not, there's going to be someone else on the wire that you can get. You can't just be patient with a guy like Cousins where he's not even going to get, like, he's not even getting power play 1 time right now, right? Like, this guy is no production, not even power play 1, center only. Like, you have to move on to someone that's giving you some production right now.
Same things I've said all episode. New coach, right? New coach over the summer. So new system, new deployments. Like, give it at least 10 games before you reach for the eject button.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's a good message to leave the people with. Is just like, don't even hover over the panic button right now. Just keep your couple streaming spots open, at least one. Be smart with your ads. Take advantage of the schedule. Don't be like Jay and stream like 6 guys every week, because that's just madness. But don't hit the panic button on guys that are expected to be mainstay parts of your rosters. And with that, boys, we'll leave it at that. We'll wrap the week 2 preview or week 2 weekend preview. The 5-hole fantasy hockey team will be back in some display tomorrow night for the second rendition of the bullshit show. So stay tuned and watch out for TJ's announcement for that sometime tomorrow. I'm sure that'll kick off around 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, where whoever's available from the 5-hole team will sit around and shoot the shit and watch some hockey games and talk hockey and just get caught up with each other from a life standpoint. And then TJ, Raj, Maddie will be back Saturday preview, and yeah, transition us out, Alan. We'll say goodnight on that. Hit that exit intro music, whatever we're calling that.
Yep.
The outro. There we go.
Good night, Paris Heron. Good night,
Yeah.
Moon.
Good night, Moon. Good night,
night.
Sun. Good night, you. Good night, me. Good night, everybody. It's all love. We'll be back soon.
We will pick you up later.
We love you, Parataran.
Love you, PT.